bring seed beads in. Okay, I have a Minnesota joke. You know, in Minnesota, usually the lakes freeze in the winter. They didn't this last year, and so there's this little kid out there ice fishing, pulling up fish every 5 minutes. And there's a older gentleman, and he can't figure out why he can't catch any fish, but this little kid is pulling him up like you wouldn't believe. So he keeps moving closer and closer. And finally, he asks the kid, "How are you catching so many fish?" And the kid goes, "Mm." And he goes, "Come on, kid, tell me what's going on." And the kid goes, "Mm." Now he's getting mad. He says, "Come on, kid." Kid goes, "You got to keep the worms warm."
That's funny.
I don't know how. I couldn't find it.
It's usually one of the F buttons. Is it one of these? Here we go. Oh,
It's usually in here, but it's not in there.
anybody
Oh, wait,
know?
with it.
Yeah, we're just trying to turn the volume down.
No.
Anybody know how to turn the volume down on this computer? Anybody?
Oh,
Great.
there. Okay.
There you go. There you
That's
go.
speakers, though.
No.
Is it? Okay.
It's
That was
perfect.
it. Okay. It was the speakers. Okay.
It takes a village.
Okay. We're good. Okay. I'm Doris. I think most of you know me. My website, and I forgot to bring cards. My website is beadsbyd.com. And beside having a full bead store online, I also do I started the Twin City Bead Bazaar and I sold it to Dakota Stone right before COVID, thank God. But, um, uh, and so that's why I have stuff here tonight for sale. But I also work as a tour agent for a company called Bead Venture Tours. And I lead the tours to the Czech Republic. We spend 5 days in Prague and then 9 days up in the mountains, going to the bead factories and the Christmas ornament factories and the lampwork factories. And we keep you very busy. Okay, everybody that's been with me, hold up your hands. See, we need the rest of you to come. The next trip is April 26th through May 8th. And then I also lead shopping tours to the Tucson Beach Show and to Providence, Rhode Island. Providence, Rhode Island was the costume jewelry manufacturing capital of the world between 1850 and 1950. And the factories are mostly gone, but the suppliers are all still there. So it's a fun shopping trip. So I've been on, I didn't lead the Bead Venture tour to India, but I went on it and went through the bead factories there. I was on a Kumihimo trip to Japan, and that was partially sponsored by Toho. So the Toho let us into their factory, which they won't let you in if you just show up at their door. So what I'm going to show you today will be pictures from inside the factories and explain to you how the bead making processes differ by country. So Rochelle, you have to put back up the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. The green are tubes of beads in bundles waiting to be cut into beads. The purse is wooden beads that are made at a factory in the Czech Republic. The orange thing is what the beads look like when they come out of the press before the excess has been broken off of them and they've been put in the tumbler. And the bottom right is scrap. Now, I'll show you as we go on. The scrap, if it's a large factory that is doing just one color a day, they can reuse 20 to 30%. If they make a new batch, 20 to 30% of it can be the scrap. They can't just, well, they are starting now to just remelt the scrap, but they still need to put a little bit more of new stuff in there. Okay, why aren't we working here? Let's try. Oh, there we go. No. It's not paging down.
Right here.
I tried that one too. Yeah. Okay, let's try this. We can't get the pages to turn. Let's try starting it over. Whoops. And I want to go here. And the darn thing isn't. Technical difficulties. There we go. Oh, now I have to figure out how to share it first. Oops, not that one, this one. Yeah, but it's not. There we go. Okay. This is the factory in India. India is the most primitive of the bead factories that I've been in. And it is almost like the way Czech did it 100 years ago, but not quite. The gentleman on the left side is taking a gather of glass out of the hot glory hole, and he puts it on the table and spreads it out, and then he's rolling it together to form a cone that has a hole in the middle. That's what he's doing on the right side picture. Then he puts it in a machine where the hole keeps heating the glass and it melts and it comes out these tubes, these trays, and it keeps moving on these trays for probably the length, almost the length of this room. Then when it gets to the end, they cut it in 3-foot sections, which what he's doing is bundling them together, which those green bundles that I showed you at the start, that's what he's doing with them. He's putting together a bundle of tiny bead rods that have a hole in the middle. Here's the rod stock. You can see they tie it in bundles. And then these people on the right are sitting there cutting seed beads with their hands on a moving saw. Those beads are flying all over the place. Exactly. And you can see he's kneeling. He's just kneeling down. I can't get down that far, but he's just kneeling down and cutting those as they get closer and closer and closer to the saw. Then all the seed beads are taken over to the carbon area. And the guys in the carbon area, can you see the white mask he's got around his head? It's because that carbon is deadly. And they coat all the beads in carbon and then put them in the tumbler and heat them and tumble them. But the carbon keeps them from sticking together and from the center holes to close. Then they wash all the carbon off and they're dried and then they're sorted. Oops. Do both of these work at the same time? It's not showing though. Oh, it is. Okay. Okay. So this is one of the sorters. And they go, those are bigger beads and these are way smaller beads. Thank you, Beth. Then, oops, I missed. Okay, then I'll show you, if they want to put a finish on them, I'll show you that in a minute. This is lamp working. So all these guys, again, are sitting or kneeling on the floor around this furnace, and they're all doing lamp working. And the picture on the right is a guy doing it at home in his living room. So he has a little tiny furnace and a little more what we consider the traditional lamp working. Here's what we consider the traditional lamp working. Wood or coal. And here is, can you see that? Okay. The oil goes in here. They light there's wicks in here. The flame comes out of there. And then there's a bellows that pushes the flame into a point like our modern day torches do. So they are very primitive. And these two are both on a table in the house. Chevron beads, the picture where all the people were sitting around the furnace, one of those gentlemen was making the chevron bead when we showed up at this factory. And you can see on the left and on the right what it looks like as he lays the last color of the chevron into that chunk. And the chunk was about 6 inches around and maybe 8 inches long, something like that. And when we got there, he was laying in the last two colors. And then he picked it up and he went and put it in the annealing furnace. And our guide starts to leave. And I went, wait a minute. I said, how long does that have to be in the furnace? He goes, oh, 10 or 15 minutes. I said, we're not leaving. Because we then got to see them pull the cane. That is hot glass being pulled and stretched.
Gosh.
And actually, back 100 years ago, that is how they made seed beads originally. They had a clump of hot glass with a hole in the middle that they blew. They blew the hole in the middle. Another person came up on the back end and attached a rod to it, and they ran in opposite directions. Then when they cooled off, they would cut them the same as they didn't have the electric saws, but they would cut them, and that's how they actually first made seed beads. So these chevron beads aren't far from that. And these ladies all had beautiful manicures, and they were cutting the cane into chevron beads. There, what'd you say? They were doing faceting on stone with these beautiful manicures. And they just kept working, and gorgeous clothes, not, you know. Exactly. This is a press glass factory. And This is similar to the Czech press glass factory, but more primitive. And when we get into Czech, I'll show you the old presses versus the new presses. But India, everything in India is filthy and dirty. And I don't know how those ladies cutting the cane kept from getting their clothes dirty, because everything in the whole country is dirty. So this is how the pressed glass in India, the rods that they start out with are this size. And in Czech, the rods that they start out with are that size. So you can see the difference. So they push the rods into the furnace. When it gets hot enough, they've got the hot rods in their left hand and a paddle in their right hand that can you see that the hot glass is down into a point so that it can go into the bead press. Now, are you guys familiar if I say a drill press? Do you know what that is? It's instead of a handheld drill, it's a drill that's mounted, and then there's a handle that you pull down and drill whatever you do. A bead press is essentially a drill press. And when these are operated manually, now the current ones they just keep going thump, 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 thump. And you have to make sure that you get the glass in there. And as the two pieces of the mold come together, a wire goes through to make the hole. So with each press, a wire goes through. And then when they want to do a different kind of bead, they just put a different mold in there. Yes. Then they fall out the back, which is the left picture, and they fall into a container, which is how they're annealed. And from annealing, they stay in there overnight, and the next day they put them into a tumbler that is just dry. There's nothing in there, just the beads. And that was the picture. Can you see that? Am I holding it in the right spot? Okay. Yeah. And so that is, yep, that is before it's put into the tumbler and all that extra outside stuff is broken off. Exactly. The minimum order in Czech for a color of rods from the factory is 20 kilos, and almost half of it is waste. The machine on the right is a faceting machine. So first they press the round beads, and then when we get to Czech, I have a movie of it actually working. But they have this thing that looks like a comb, and they put a bead on each wire, and then that comb goes into the faceting machine where it runs over a water-cooled grinding wheel, and it moves so that it can facet each side. That's your normal fire polish. And then it's taken from there. And again, when we get to Czech, I'll show you the whole process. They're laid on a tray of sand and put through the furnace again, which is why it's called fire polish, because they're heated again after they're faceted to take off any sharp edges. This one is the one that's an ocean nightmare. He's putting an AB finish on those beads, and that it's fumed with some kind of chemical. And that white smoke is some kind of chemical going in the air. So kind of like the mines, I don't think these guys live very long. Okay, in the Czech Republic, this is a bundle of the rods, and I told you how thick they were. And if it's a two color, turn it sideways so they can see. Can you see the no, this other end? There. Can you see the two colors in there? That will make a two-color bead. India beads are not annealed properly, so a lot of times they break. And they usually aren't washed either after, especially the lampwork ones, aren't washed, so they have a powdery, the kiln release on them, and they're not really good quality at all. Oh yeah, yeah, I can look at a bead and tell you if it was made in India. Yep. No, they're Czech. Well, they make them in India and China also. Yeah. You just have to have been in the business for a long yeah, or ask. But most of the people selling them will tell you what supplier they got them from. And the suppliers are usually all very they don't do fire polish in Japan, do they? I don't think so. Goes back into the furnace after it's faceted. Yeah. Yeah. So so this is the Preciosa factory. And during communist time and after in the Czech Republic, the Russians controlled and held basically a monopoly on the bead factories. That company was named Yablonec, and in 2009, Preciosa bought them out. During the Yablonec years, there were 50 to 100 factories in the Czech Republic. Now, when I say factory, I can see you guys picturing huge buildings like this one. No, most of the bead production in Czech Republic is a cottage industry. So it's done in the garage or in the basement or in the back bedroom or in the barn. It's not done. There was only maybe a half a dozen of these big buildings. All the other 50 factories were in their houses. And so when Yablonec was in control, anybody that made seed beads had to sell their seed beads to Yablonec, and then Yablonec distributed them. They were not allowed to sell them wholesale and distribute them themselves. So they held a monopoly on it. Now, since Preciosa has taken over, Preciosa is the only one making seed. Well, I take that back. There's one other factory making seed beads, and they actually press them where most seed beads and delicas are what we call extruded, kind of like the India, where he puts the cone of glass and then the hole melts and makes the hole and goes down the long tray. That's called extruding. Now, Preciosa, well, all the factories in the Czech Republic did not advertise, but if you were driving by and went and knocked on the door, they would probably give you a tour. The Preciosa factory back in the late 1990s, there was a tour group there, and Preciosa rules are no photos in the factory. And at that time they would let you take the photos with the promise that you wouldn't publish or put them online. And one of the people in this group published them. So that was it. Nobody got into a Preciosa factory until 3 years ago. They started giving tours again, and now they don't allow any pictures at all. They're not taking the chance again. And these big buildings, they have one big building like this for seed beads, one for pressed glass, one for glass pearls, one for fire polish. So they have several of these big buildings. They are within a half an hour of each other. And what was your question, Rochelle?
Can you repeat the question so those of us online can understand what you're answering?
Yep. The last question was, are these all close to each other? And they're all within a half an hour of each other in the same general election. The fire polish on how it's done, I'll explain that in a minute. So the picture on the left is pressed seed beads, not extruded. There is one factory that does pressed seed beads. And that same factory has also started making cylinder beads. Now, they are not as fine as Toho and Miyuki. They're more earthy looking, but they're still cylinder beads. And they work up very nice. And so, see, do you see people you know in that picture? Sonia, Suzanne, Jean, Anne, Julie, Nancy, Kathy. He was just in Prague though, wasn't he? Yeah, there was more than just our group in that they were wanting to know who that guy was. He wasn't with our group. Okay, these are what the bead molds look like. So they can do, if they're small beads, they can do 3 at once, which is why this mold, you can do 5 at once. And these are, before there was a drill press, there was a pair of pliers. So it took 2 guys. And actually, they put those pliers in kind of a press so they could still do it that way. They didn't have to just hold on to the pliers. But there's a needle on there that goes through. One of these is for beads and one is for buttons. Okay, the picture on the left is a modern day pressed bead setup. The picture on the right is a 100-year-old one. Now you can see that on the 100-year-old one, it's burned with wood. The new ones are burned with gas. The drill press on the new one is automated, and on the old one, it's hand. Now, the first couple times I was in the Czech Republic, as I said, a lot of these were all cottage industries in the barn or the backyard. And you would walk down the little towns and you could hear and you knew that that was a bead factory because that was the press. And you could tell by the smokestack coming out of the roof.
Bead at a time?
Yes, that's one bead at a time. Or if it's little ones, then there's maybe 2, 3, 4 in there, but basically one bead at a time, yes. This is Mr. Nichols. No, these are all individual owned factories. She asked if and you can see him putting the hot glass, and he keeps moving the glass rods closer and closer and he puts the hot glass into, you can see the drill press operating himself. This is a small factory in their barn. They have to, the only factory that makes rods is Preciosa. So yeah, they have to get them from Preciosa. And Mr. Nichols used to have 4 presses, so he had 3 employees besides himself. And he is now in ill health, so they closed down their factory a little more than 10, maybe 15 years ago. They still have 1 press in there, so they can show you what it looks like. And this is the back, this one that's moving now here on the right is the back side of the press. And in a minute, you will see some beads sliding down the tray. Come on, beads, I know you're there. There you go. So they're sliding down the tray, you can see. And they cool off slightly before the thing flips up and they fall into that can and they stay there overnight till the next day. That's their annealing process. This is one of the fire polish grinders. And I think this one is a movie also, yes. Oh, no, this is the automated press. On this press, here you can see those things sticking up. Those are trays that they put those rods in. And as they get closer and closer to the heat, the machine works all himself. All this guy has to do is keep putting new rods up there. And it just runs by itself. No, this is in the Starman factory. Well, it's not Starman anymore. He sold it, but is that what it's called now? Okay. Yeah. His Starman's general manager bought it. Okay, and here's the beads coming out the backside of the automated. This is one of the dry tumblers there on the left. That's what they put it in to break off all the scrap that's around the edge. And a lot of the small bead factories that work, the cottage industry ones that work out of the barn or the backyard, don't have a water source. So they have one of these dry tumblers. So they put the beads in the dry tumbler and then sort them when they come out. Then they send them to another factory for the wet tumbling, another factory to put a finish on them if they're AB or something like that, another factory to do the fire polish if they're, or the Picasso finish, and then a home cottage industry to be strung, depending on how the customer is ordering them. The picture on the right, whoops, is they're coming out of the wet tumbler and then being sorted. So it's similar to the ones I showed you in India, but it's much more clean and much more modern. This is a fire polish faceter. So the thing with the 2 handles there is what looks like the comb, and she will put that in the tray and get a bead on each of the combs. Make sure they're set. Then she will turn to the other machine and put it on the grinder. Now, before they had the automated grinders, see, she just puts it in there and hits a button and it does it itself. They had to stand there and move that comb to get grinded, which is why if you buy a hand faceted fire polish from 50, 75 years ago, it's very roughly polished. It still went through the fire again to smooth off the edges, but it's not as exact as these new automated machines. These are the trays on the left here where they put the fire polish in. So it's a single level. And then this is the machine. They put the trays where that black thing is right there. And there's a conveyor belt that takes, don't remember how long to go through the heat process again. And then when it comes out the other side, then if they have the finish on them, then they'll take them to put the finish on. This is another little factory. He's still in operation. Do you all know what a Picasso finish is? It's kind of a modeled, looks like it has raindrops on it or something. There's some drops here that came from this factory. Yeah, can you put those under there? Now there are only 2, maybe 3, I think just 2 places that do the Picasso finish. So there's sometime a backlog. This one is a wood-fired one, and I'm showing you his original setup. He's not allowing, they have doubled the size of the building and gone to new automated measures, and he won't let us take a picture of them.
That color, the greenish kind of blue.
They're not, she wanted to know if all the Picasso was green. No, they do black and they do red, and there's a lot of colors. And just as kind of a funny side note, both Miyuki and Toho sell Picasso finish seed beads. And Toho is the one that started it. And 2 or 3 years later, Miyuki started to do it too. But what a lot of people don't know is that they make the seed beads in Japan, ship them to Czech to get the Picasso finish put on, then they're shipped back to Japan to be distributed. Now, when Miyuki was first showing the Picasso finish at the Tucson show, I went up and asked Kenji, the owner, if they were doing it the same way that Toho was, and was shipping it to Czech. And he goes, "Oh, I could never reveal a company secret." And for those of you who can't see me, he was shaking his head up and down, so a very big yes. So this is our Picasso finish guy in the wood-fired furnace. He has a very technical cardboard shield on the front and a cardboard shield over his nose. He walks back and forth. He has to take them out, turn them around, put them back in, then walks to the end of the room and back. And that's how, because they all have to be specifically timed. And that's his timing, is how long it takes to walk. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, not the, she wanted to know if this is the guy that also does the acid etch. No, I don't actually know what factory is doing that. I could ask. I'll ask Heineck and see what he says. Okay, so you can see he's adding more wood, and he took that tray out and turned it around, and he moves it also there in the as to which tray it's sitting on. Then you'll see he walks to the other end of the room and comes back, and now it's time to take the tray back out. He does. And they spray the beads with a chemical solution in order to get the Picasso finish. And then after he's done with them, see, now he's putting them on the tray back over there. Then his son will come and grab them and puts them in in this annealing oven to keep the heat off. She asked what the cardboard was for. It's to keep, yeah, it's very, very hot and he's up close to the fire. So I don't know how often he has to replace the cardboard, but okay, this is the Toho factory in Japan. There are two parts to the factory grounds. I don't know how many acres they have, but it is actually huge. They have a private side, which only the employees and special tours can go into. And then these pictures are all from the public side. And it's like a park. People can come and take classes. They can take lampwork classes. They can take beading classes. They have a museum. They have a store. They have a restaurant. And it's like beadland. And of course, a lot of times from the Toho Challenge, those pieces are sent over to be exhibited in the museum for a year. And of course, the year I was there, my piece was there the year before. The what? City? Which city? I don't. Yeah, Hiroshima. Did somebody have a question? Oh, yeah. She wanted to know what city the factory is. Okay, this again is similar but different. The pictures on the left are the glory holes where they're heating, where they put the sand and the chemicals and the whatever to heat up the hot molten glass. They grab the glass, a gather of glass out of one of those holes, and then you can see the metal tray there. They put it on there and smooth it out. And then the thing that looks like there's a little hole flap there, that's where they put it. So here he's grabbing the gather of glass. That's hot glass at about 2000 degrees. Puts it on there to cool it off just a little. And you can see it change colors as it cools. Yeah. This is Toho. No. Toho's or Miyuki is 2 hours north of Hiroshima. Okay, so now he shoves it in that one. And this is the same as in India, where he's shoving it in, and then out the back, out the bottom, comes a tube of glass with a hole in it. And it comes down. You can see the long trays, just like on the India picture. And at the bottom, there is this machine that cuts them into 3-foot lengths. And then they are bundled into a bundle of the rods. And then these are the scrap yards. Now, they reuse it. She wants to know what they can do. What do they do with the scrap? They can use 25 to 30% of scrap in a new batch, as long as the color is the same. This is a seed bead that hasn't been cut. And these are the resulting seed beads, all nice and packaged. Now,
How long it takes.
exactly. And they're really cheap compared to I think this is the last side. Yes, it is. Okay. So the differences in the delicas are extruded slightly differently than the round seed beads are. The delicas are the cylinder beads, I should say. And it's a machine that has, I don't know, a 2-foot circle that's all little holes. And they stick those individual little rods into the holes. And there's something that cuts on the bottom and then they fall out the bottom and then get processed the same way as the pressed glass do. They're tumbled and then they're water tumbled and then they're sent for putting a finish on them. In the Czech Republic, well, let me go back. In India, they had the 3 long pieces, the trays. In Japan, they had 2, and then a separate one for delicas or for cylinder beads. In Czech, I was really shocked. They must have had at least 15. And some of them were doing 2-color beads, some of them were doing single color beads, but the entire factory was busy and all the lines were working. And like I said, I couldn't take pictures at the Czech Republic in the factory, but it was amazing the amount of product that they were putting out compared to India and Japan. The color line is for the pressed glass. I'll show that rod again on the flat end. Can you see that that's 2 colors? Yep. No, I take that back. The color lining is applied after the seed bead is made. So they're put in a bath, and the inside and the outside is colored, and then they're tumbled so that the color comes off the outside. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. And the ones that are made in Taiwan, the coatings that they put on them aren't as durable as the ones they use in Czech and Japan. Because those pretty much last. The ones made in Taiwan pretty much just wash out. Right. Now, if it's in a pressed glass bead, it is, they use the 2-color rods. Now, when Jablonex was in business, they produced the smaller size rods for lamp workers to use. And when Preciosa bought them out, they refused to produce those small rods anymore. So basically, I know they put one company out of business that their main business was selling those rods. And so they only produce the big rods now. Just the size. The product difference, the small rods, the difference between the small rods and the large rods are basically just size, because they're both made to the same temperature. And another interesting thing about the beads, if any of you are familiar with lamp working or glass working, you know that each piece of glass has a COE, a coefficient of expansion, and you cannot put a 90 with a 105. It will crack and break. And so on this last trip, we tried to get the factory to tell us what the COE was on the seed beads and the pressed glass beads. And everybody looked at us like we were crazy. We finally harassed the guy at Preciosa. Oh no, maybe it wasn't the last trip. It was a trip before. We finally harassed him so badly that we found out that each color has its own COE. So, which is why they couldn't answer our question. We had to get to one of the technical people, but the workers didn't have a clue. Those would have to be the same, and those when she wanted to know how they do the striped seed beads, and Czech is the only one that does striped seed beads. I believe that they start with a rod or the hot glass. They like take it out of the glory hole and add the colors, add the stripes, and then put them through the extruder, and the stripes go along with it. How much? She wanted to know how much they produce. No, they won't tell you that. I do know that when I first started going to Czech Republic in the late 1990s, they were a year behind on production. They had that many orders. That was when we here in the Twin Cities area had 35 bead stores. We had the most bead stores per capita of any area in the United States. As now when you go over there, well, 10 years ago, they were telling me that the orders just weren't there, and they were blaming it all on China. Well, I don't think China is to blame. The factories themselves are to blame. Do you remember when every 2 weeks there was another new bead released? The bead stores couldn't stock everything because, I mean, it just wasn't economically feasible for the stores to carry all those different kinds of beads. They put themselves out of business. And now when I was over last October or last September, a lot of the factories were not working up to full capacity because the beads are just so saturated. The bead market is so saturated now that they don't need to buy anything from the factory. And so they were not anywhere near as busy as they have been in the past. Oh, okay. Thank you. Uh-huh. Right. Japan and Czech. Oh, I'm sorry. She wanted to know the quality on the seed beads. Japan has the reputation because they do the cylinder beads, and those are especially the Icos from Toho are very exact. There are 3 bead factories in Japan, and they are all only from about the late 50s, mid 60s is when they all started. So they aren't anywhere near as old of any of the other countries. Their beads are known for being more consistent, where the Czech beads are known for not being as consistently round in the same size, which is why a lot of people like the Czech beads more for bead embroidery, especially when you're trying to fit a certain number around a cab or something like that. So it depends on what you want to do. The Czech has the Picasso finish that nobody else does. They also have colors that Japan cannot duplicate. So, and the Czech has been with it for so many more years, 100 years. So The check also has Vaseline glass, which is the glass that glows under black light that has uranium in it. So just make sure you don't eat it. Otherwise, it's fine. Sandy's at Storm Cloud. Or what was the other one, Rochelle? Does Bobby have any check? No. Does Lotus? No. I think the one on Nicollet, Bead Hive probably has some check. The what? Oh yeah, Taylor's Falls has a large stock of check beads. Yes. Check beads also make 10 and check beads make some weird sizes. Delica is Miyuki and Toho is Aiko and Treasures. The Fire Mountain and Shipwreck online both carry. Shipwreck especially has a very good stock of check. Now, if seed beads from Japan are almost always, well, anything that we see here in the United States, they're loose. The seed beads that they sell to Japanese customers are in short hanks. All of the check seed beads are hanked, but they have long hanks. And you can usually tell if it's check and it's a short hank, it's more than 50 years old. The 50, what she wants to know, what 50-gram bags? Not usually check ones. You don't usually find check ones loose. It just could be the distributor. If you find check in bags, it could be just the distributor that they've either broken the hanks or taken them off the hanks or prefer to sell them in, or maybe that's the way they order them, because they can order them any way they want and the factory will usually comply with their orders. She wants to know if there's a reason why they put them on hanks. I think it's just tradition. And they were, well, probably 100 years ago when they started making them, they didn't have plastic bags. Yeah, it's a strand of a hank. Yes, a hank is on strings and it's 12 strands for a hank. Yeah. Yeah, so if you string them and they're a certain length, then you don't have to weigh them so that they know how many beads are actually on there. Japanese beads only come hanked to be sold in Japan, not in the United States. I have no idea. I was really surprised when I was in Japan. All the seed. Yeah. Yeah, because they have to pay somebody to string them. Yes. They, to string on the hanks, they use, if you've seen the little bead spinners that like Suzanne and you guys use, there's the same thing, except it's, and it holds 5 pounds of beads. And they can put 12 needles in their fingers at the same time. Yeah, it's about like that. I didn't bring it. I do have pictures of it and pictures of them doing it. I didn't put that on there. Yes. Actually, all of their department stores have a craft area and they all have beads. And we went to the Miyuki store. Kenji wouldn't let me come to the factory, but he gave us permission. The factory store has a museum on the second floor that you don't usually get to see. But because I said Kenji sent me, they let me up there. It helps to know people. Have you been to the factory, the Miyuki factory? So is it basically the same? Yeah. Yes, in their store. Like Toho has the um public section of their area, and there's a big store there that has all their beads and stuff in it. Yeah, well, um, I think it was a slightly cheaper, but I don't remember. That's too many years ago. What was your question? They're usually cheaper at the factory, but then it also depends. Like if you're in Czech, Europe has a 21% tax. And so if the place you're at decides to charge you tax, it is not cheaper. If they don't charge tax, because one of the factories we go through charges tax most of the time, not always. Most of the other places do not charge tax because we pay them in cash. Mm-hmm. That's one of the factories in the Czech Republic. I didn't bring my bracelet sample for that. I didn't think of that. You can, I don't have them on my website. I do have some that I bought when I was there last time. You can also get them, anybody that carries, any stores that carry the Beadsmith product, you can order them through Beadsmith, which is the wholesale supplier. Cylinder beads. Just check cylinder beads. Yeah. The duets are done. She wanted to know if we saw anybody doing duets. The factory that does the super duos does the duets. And they just put 2 colors of glass in there. And they have to be very precise as so that half the glass comes down at the same time. But yeah, they do it on an automated machine, believe it or not. And their sorter is really cool. In Czech and who else had, and Preciosa had the same kind of sorter. It's 2 stories tall. And it looks like a paper roundabout kind of spiral staircase, a paper spiral staircase. And the small towards the top has the small holes, and then as it goes down there's bigger holes, so it's a sorter, so they drop out and they leave it run all night, and so when they come back in the morning all their beads are sorted. It's really cool. I don't think so. Okay, the question was, does Japan do anything smaller than 15s? And Rochelle said they did a test run a couple years ago to do a 16, 18 size, but they never put it into production. And the size 15s in Czech are more like 16s or 17s. But no, nobody really does any of the 18s, 20s, 22s, 24s. Those all stopped 50 years ago. Me. Yeah, you can still find stashes. They want to know where you get beads that size. A lot of people have stashes. Like, for example, when Swarovski stopped selling to retail stores, I tell you, I have a $10,000 worth of Swarovski at my house. If you need any, come and see me. And I was just at the Swarovski distributor, and I found out also recently that it was the grandkids of the original Swarovski that decided to change the way the company was going, and not sell to retail. That kid is no longer at the company. So watch for changes in the future. So they're asking Suzanne what beads she uses on her wire work. So Suzanne does wire beaded flowers, and she buys small seed beads wherever she can find them. And whenever I buy estates, so if anybody has an estate for sale, come and see me. But anything that small, I save to give Suzanne first choice.
Doris says the check 15s, or are sold as 15s, are usually much smaller than the Japanese version of the same bead, a seed bead. And if you want to go one step a little smaller, you should try a 15 check Charlotte. And that will take you down a little bit more. But a lot of people that are selling the real small beads they're not real pretty. So you pay a lot of money, premium price, for something that may not be any smaller than a good old check 15. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Bead Cats is known for selling the very small beads. I don't know how much of a stock. That's an online. I don't know how much of a stock they still have. And Eclectica.
Yeah, but they got an estate from someone who had been collecting for years, and the range of those beads ran from 24 to, I think, 16s. So you can, but it's pretty difficult to use 24s because it's pretty difficult to find a needle that will fit.
Yeah, or a wire that thin. We call those tiny beads sand. Yep. Yes. No. Svetlana is saying that her favorite kind of check beads are the two cuts. Two cuts are basically a Charlotte. Charlotte is a one cut. Yeah. Yeah, shorter. And then they make hex so that they have 8 sides. They're not totally round. A Charlotte has one slice out of one side of the bead, and so they have a little sparkle to them. The cylinder beads are cylinder beads, just like the ones made in Japan, but they're not as defined and fine. They're more earthy looking. They have 2 sizes. They started out with a 10, and they're now going into an 11. But I don't know how widely that one's been distributed yet, but the 10s are out there. The Venetian beads are mostly lamp worked. And so they would be the same kind of okay, I keep moving and getting out of the picture. Okay. The Venetian stuff is mostly lamp worked. So that it's done in front of the furnace or on a table with a blowtorch. Or I don't think they're still using the old style stuff, but they are very well annealed and very good quality. They used to. There was also used to be a seed bead factory in France. That went out of business, and they did absolutely fantastic what's called greasy beads. So the finish looks greasy. Now Czech had stopped doing greasy beads 40, 50 years ago, and they've started again. Suzanne, you want to come up here and talk about repeat what you said before? Okay, so I'll just repeat it. So the tiny beads are hard to find, but like I find them a lot when I buy an estate. Bead Cats is the online people known for having small, although I don't know how much their stash is. Eclectica has had a stash. They come to the Bead Bazaar or their stores in Milwaukee. You have to be careful when you get the really small stuff because you need double or triple O thread and then a really, really tiny needle because they're very hard to get a needle through. And if you're doing wire work with them, the wire that you have to use is so thin that it's also not very durable. Do you want to add anything else, Suzanne?
Copper core wire. It's also, but I started to use stainless steel wire because.
Okay, stop. The standard was originally copper core wire, but now Suzanne is using stainless steel wire because it's so nice and strong. And you can go a smaller gauge because it is so strong. And that accommodates the smaller size 16 or 18 beads, and it's more durable because that's one of the problems is you have to use such a small gauge wire. Oh, are you giving a talk? Oh, she's going to be our speaker in October. Yay. Okay, so the next time we're back here for an in-person meeting, Suzanne is going to be our speaker and talk to us about wire flowers. And so she'll bring in all kinds of samples. Okay, any more questions? Okay, I guess we can, do we just sign off or how do we end the meeting? Okay, we have one more announcement.
Look at sea beads the same ever
For the display pieces at the state fair, for the non-judge display case, I will be picking one of the 3 days of entry, which is 10th, 11th, and 12th of August. So I would like anything you're going to drop off at Lotus Bead by the 7th, So I have time to go down to the Mall of America and pick them all up. And so if you're gonna submit something for display and you want to leave it at Lotus, have it there by this August 7th.
I have something I would like to say. This is Paulette.
Hang on just a second, Paulette. You'll have to look on the website. Diane wanted to know if there was a date for entry into fine arts. It is before the general entry for the judge stuff in creative activities. So you'll have to look on the website. Yeah. Oh, and make sure you put your name on the piece that's going to be displayed. Make sure we know who it comes from. Okay, July 15th for the fine arts exhibit, and it's the middle of August for the creative activities. And then somebody wanted to know bead factories in Italy. They still do a few things on Murano, but they have no more seed bead factories.
I have been reminded to tell people we are going to be at the Anoka Fair, July 24th. There will be 3 of us demonstrating beadwork for the Anoka County people. I guess they're starting to have some like make and take things to get people revved up for the number of craft entries has gone down. And so they're doing little make and take things for different kinds of crafts to get people revved up about doing crafts again and maybe doing more entries. So that's why they welcoming us.
We scared her. Oh, Paulette, what was your question?
I didn't have a question, but we were talking about committees and we're talking about needing volunteers. So the sponsorship committee does need more volunteers. And basically, we're the group that works on ideas to solicit items from vendors. What kind of items do we want to get from vendors? And this helps supply our 35th anniversary, some things we get for that, raffle prizes for our fundraiser, Twin City Bead Bazaar. You know, some of you are donating, you know, Raid Your Stash for these type of things, but we're also needing specific things to help with these projects that we do. Also, Let's Bead Live. Any other kind of project that we might want to develop a kit for. So I need some volunteers that be willing to work with me and the other members. We had some people that had to drop out. And basically we just meet via Zoom and just for, you know, hour or 2 or so every month just to figure out. We're also the ones that figure out who do we want to put a banner of a business on our website, things like that. Sometimes you also might be asked to make a contact with somebody in Minnesota since I'm in Kansas. So if you are interested, please contact me or actually talk to Jan and Jan could put you in contact with me so that we can get more people. So again, this is a fun activity. You have a say with what we're doing, what we're collecting, what we're going to be donating, gathering, things like that. So thank you so much.
Are we done? How do we sign off? Bye.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you so much. Thanks to the Carondelet Center for letting us here. And we'll hope to see you July 20th at the Edina Senior Center for our Let's Bead Live with Doris, and all the more information will be coming out about that. Yes, Highway 100, like 50th Street. So July 20th, Saturday from noon to 4. See you then. Bye.